All right, everybody, welcome to this live stream. We just got news today, actually, just sort of information that possibly Figure AI, which is a robotics company, is in talks to raise $500 million in a funding round led by Microsoft and OpenAI. So this is something that Dr. Scott Walter and I have been talking about for a few times, which is, Figure as a robotics company is seemingly doing really well. We've done a number of videos on them. We both interviewed Brett Adcock, the CEO of Figure, and we asked them the question, are you in partnership with one of the larger, AI kind of companies out there like OpenAI or DeepMind or maybe Microsoft? And he had said, no, we're building our own AI team. But we knew that there was probably something coming up, and certainly they're like a hot startup. Their money's being thrown at them. Scott, what did you think when you saw this news?
Well, it didn't come as a surprise because while Figure is doing well, they've been able to do a lot being severely undercapitalized. Now, they had an original round of about $70 million, which, to most of us sounds like a lot of money. But when you really think about it, in Silicon Valley, if you have 70 to 100 employees, that money evaporates pretty quickly. I mean, it's like 12 months at most, and you would need to have this next funding round. So this is not really a surprise. The one thing about this is that the sourcing on this comes down to, a source with knowledge of what's going on. So this is not a done deal yet. And you see in this press release that Microsoft weighs leading around that could raise 500 million. So they're probably going to do it. I'm not sure if it was leaked intentionally, by which side, or who the knowledgeable source is. It's not a big surprise. And even then, while that's a good, let's say, next round of money, they're still going to need more rounds after that. So they will have a market cap, or let's say their capitalization will be something like $1.9 billion with about 500 million in cash that they will be able to spend. So that's about 7 times more than, let's say, what they had currently. But they're still going to be ramping up a little bit. As we know, it sounds like a lot of money to us, but when you look at Silicon Valley startups, it very easily people throw $1 billion at them to go ahead and solve different problems. So I'm expecting more, and they seem to be very capital efficient right now. They did a lot with 70, so let's imagine what they would be able to do with 500 million.
Yeah. Okay, so today we're going to actually show video of what Microsoft had said about their efforts with humanoid bots. We're also going to show video of Sam Altman himself of OpenAI and what he was saying about what OpenAI's approach is to humanoid bots. In the meantime, let's continue reading the news or the kind of information that's being shared right now. We'll watch video of Figure themselves and just remind people what that bot looks like. So this is the article. The article said that the startup Figure is seeking additional investors for the deal, said a person who has not to be identified. So this is still very much hearsay, as we were saying. In one scenario being discussed, Microsoft would invest about $95 million and OpenAI would put in $5 million. Seems like you were saying, seems very low. It's
only 100 million from Microsoft, and then you'd have to get another 400 million from somewhere else. If they're leading it, then it shouldn't be that hard in Silicon Valley to be able to snap your fingers and come up with another 400 million on top of that.
Gotcha. This is just they're leading up. It still seems low to me. The deal would give Figure a $1.9 billion pre-money valuation. Figure's post-money valuation could be significantly higher depending on the amount raised, easily making the startup a unicorn twice over. So it's already 1.9 billion.
Yeah. Now, I just was talking with Søren Basher about an hour ago about this to get his sort of take on it. And I said, like, $95 million, that's chump change for Microsoft, right? They're sitting on a pretty big cash pile. Was it over 60 billion or something like that? So they could easily make it more than that. And he said, well, that's kind of typical. Everything is milestone based. You don't want to just throw a whole lot of money at them.
Sure, where there might be 10 million
to get the next one. And then you think of ramping it up. And I think classic examples of that is that there are a lot of companies in the EV space that ended up raising a lot of money. And then let's say they didn't learn what it was like to be aggressive or how hard it was to get by with a small cash pile. So probably the wise thing is like, give them enough money to keep them going and give them the incentives if you want to get to the next round, so you remain capital efficient. So it's a good amount. But obviously there's going to probably be more later on, and it'll be interesting to see who the other players are, because that's only 20% of what they would like to get. The other thing I would caution everyone is I've seen press releases like this before, for instance, about XAI, that Elon was raising like 500 million. And then quickly he said, not true. Okay. So a lot of times you may see these things, and depending on how thinly sourced they are and everything, they could just be rumors. The interesting thing is if you actually go to Figure, to their posts, to their profile, and to Brett Adcock, they have not really commented on this at all. In fact, I think we had a rather interesting post from Brett this morning.
The only post I saw this morning was him saying good morning.
Yeah, good morning with a salute, and then someone replied something to it with a shipping icon, with a ship, and then underneath that, yup. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Well, he's been saying this quite a bit, that their focus now is to ship the robots.
Yes.
So let's continue this. So we've got him saying the funding round isn't finalized. The investment amounts could change. The deal could still fall apart. Microsoft, OpenAI, and Figure declined to comment. So this last May, you've been saying this Figure raised $70 million in a funding round led by Parkway Venture Capital. Brett Adcock said, "We hope that we're one of the first groups to bring to market a humanoid that can actually be useful and do commercial activities. You and I have reported last week, and we interviewed him when they announced their partnership with BMW, and now showing the ability for the bot to do that coffee demo that I just showed there. And so there's lots of activities happening. I'm going to be interviewing Sanctuary AI in a couple of weeks here. And then there's another AI robotics company called 1X that you and I have done a show on. They've raised $100 million. So obviously it's hot and heavy, and we're following it closely. So let's take a closer look. So this is the announcement. TeslaBot Journal does a great job on X following.
He's great.
All these
Definitely
activities.
follow him. Definitely.
So let's take a look. So this is a Microsoft CEO in his recent interview at the WEF talked about three major elements that will combine to create platforms for innovation. So compute infrastructure, they're spending $50 billion on that. AI, they partner with OpenAI, and augmented reality, virtual reality devices, and embodied AI, such as humanoid robots. Let's listen to what he's saying there.
On the technology front, I'm always sort of anchoring back to three things, right? One is when it comes to the core compute infrastructure, we just need more of it. So we have the von Neumann machine that still rules the world. And the question is, can we birth the new quantum revolution? So I'm always excited about quantum. In fact, some of what we're seeing is AI as the emulation layer for what is going to be the simulation layer, which is quantum, right? So if I think about these two things, that's very powerful. So quantum is one, AI, of course. The other one is, mixed reality, presence. I'm very interested in, when I think about embodied AI is the other way to think about it, right? Which is whether it's sensors on us, which is sort of a little more of the devices like VR, AR, mixed reality, or humanoid robots is another one, or automobiles that are autonomous. So I think of these three things as perhaps where compute, AI, and fundamentally autonomous and mixed reality devices are all going to come together to create, I think, the platforms of innovation.
Okay, what do you think, Scott?
Yeah, well, clearly embodied AI is on his mind. It seems like more his stress might be towards in the AR, VR world, and I'm not sure if he's thinking that part of the augmented reality is some sort of agent or bot that you would be able to control autonomously, but he's also looking at autonomous. So it looks like they're dipping their toe in this space. Is kind of the feeling is that he sees it important, but I think of the things, it might have been the third on the list, but still not one of those things you want to ignore. That a little bit there. So it wasn't completely focused on the humanoid bot, but definitely it was part of all the puzzle he's trying to put together. And again, $100 million to Microsoft, or 95 million in this case, is not a big investment. It's not really risky. They can go ahead and do it. and the upside is probably so big, it's worth going ahead and doing that. And they need data. They need to find out. And the other thing is that even though it's money that they could easily throw at it, they're not going to throw at it without doing some sort of due diligence. And we've seen that a lot of those teams, different teams, I don't know if Microsoft has sent anyone, but I think OpenAI has visited Figure, Google DeepMind has, everything else. I'm sure they're going out and really kicking the tires to make sure that this is something that is a worthwhile investment. And in many cases, even if it doesn't pan out, what you learn from it can be something you then use as a stepping stone for the next one. So a lot of times, if Microsoft was to say start developing this on their own in-house, easily they would need $100 million that they would be spending to go ahead and do that, or more. So why not go ahead and get that, find out, see is it a viable technology, and then start thinking about the next rounds.
Okay, so the only thing I would like to say is that I think you said that it was the third item on their list. I don't see it that way. I mean, if you look at this list again, right? So you've got compute infrastructure, you've got AI, you got AR, VR devices, and embodied AI such as humanoid robots.
Such as,
all three is actually what's leading to AGI, right? So you need the data centers to have enough data to be able to have compute power. You need the AI, of course. That's the work you're doing. But a lot of people are thinking that embodied AI, the AR, VR devices, maybe is training. That's data that will give training to these robots. But people believe that embodied AI, like the human robots, is the first to receive AGI. So I'm scheduled to interview Sanctuaries, and the CEO said that they're just doing the robots as a means to an end. They may not necessarily sell the robot per se, but they believe that they can get to embodied AI. And now, in this interview, you heard Nadella talk about quantum. This CEO at Sanctuary ran D-Wave, which is the quantum computers. And so there's this, I know this is like out there, but I believe is that consciousness in the brain is quantum, and the way to get your AI to become, eventually conscious and to have that extra level of just leap up in level, you need the supercomputer, you need the quantum computer combined with, the data centers for compute, the AI, and so forth. So yeah, it's part of that strategic triangle, and without one of those corners, the triangle falls apart. So yeah, you could be right. It's like there's three things in the item, but the list has to start from the top to the bottom. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're in order of importance. It just means that those are the three items that are there. Yeah. But I just, listening to it, I almost felt like he downplayed the whole idea of the humanoid bot. And I'm not sure if that's intentional, because a lot of times when you see something that's really big, you don't necessarily want everyone to see your hand. Oh, gotcha. I like that idea. Okay, so let's listen into what OpenAI is saying. What's Sam Altman saying? So in a recent interview with Bill Gates, Sam Altman talked about OpenAI's interactions with robotics. Let's listen to that.
Aspect of AI is robotics, or blue collar jobs, when you get sort of hands and feet that are at human level capability. And the incredible Chat GPT breakthrough has kind of gotten us focused on the white collar thing, which is super appropriate. But I do worry people are losing the focus on the blue collar piece. So how do you see robotics?
Super excited for that. We started robots too early. And so we had to put that project on hold. It was hard for the wrong reasons. It wasn't helping us make progress with the difficult parts of the ML research. And, we were like dealing with bad simulators and breaking tendons and things like that. And also we realized more and more over time that what we really first needed was intelligence and cognition. And then we could figure out how to adapt it to physicality. And it was easier to start with that with the way we've built these language models. But we have always planned to come back to it. We've started investing a little bit in robotics companies. I think on the physical hardware side, there's finally, for the first time that I've ever seen, really exciting new platforms being built there. And at some point, we will be able to use our models, as you were saying, with their language understanding and future video understanding to say, all right, like, let's do amazing things with a robot.
But if the hardware guys, who've done a good job on legs actually get the arms, hands, fingers piece, and then we couple it, and it's not ridiculously expensive, that could change the job market for a lot of the blue collar type work pretty rapidly.
Yeah. Certainly the prediction, like the consensus prediction, if we rewind 7 or 10 years, was that the impact was going to be blue collar work first, white collar work second, creativity maybe never, but certainly last, because that was magic and human. Obviously, it's gone exactly the other direction. And I think there's like a lot of interesting takeaways about why that happened. You know, creative work, actually, the hallucinations of the GPT models is a feature, not a bug. It lets you discover some new things. Whereas if you're, you know, having a robot move heavy machinery around, you better be really precise with that. And I think this is just a case of you've got to follow where technology goes, and you have preconceptions, but sometimes the science doesn't want to go that way.
Wow, that was Bill Gates interviewing OpenAI Sam Altman. I like that clip. There's a lot of very interesting things they talked about. What did you get out of that, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, the very last point that Sam made there, that sometimes you look at a certain path and it ends up getting you there very differently. And, you know, when I go back as a kid growing up in the 60s during the Apollo space program and what the future is supposed to look like, no one predicted the internet, you know, and it turned out that the internet has been like one of the most important pieces in the transformation that we've seen in the technology and everything. So it is really hard to be able to predict what's going to happen. You know, you have these different pieces, but as he says, when you start to do the science, it sort of dictates the realities of what's going on. And the fact that they've always thought about it and realizing that, wait a minute, we're kind of putting the cart ahead of the horse here. We need to take care of some of these other problems first and do that. And again, the blue collar part. Now, CERN's been working on some interesting models looking at the impact the bots are going to have on the labor market. And while everyone is afraid it's going to take everyone's jobs, it's not going to take everyone's jobs for quite a while. There's going to be a very slow penetration going in there. And so by the time you really start to see significant penetration in there, it will be enough for society to be able to adapt and adjust. And more than likely, with a lot of the attrition and the retirement that's going on, it may be that's not really taking jobs away from anyone, but it's actually filling in the jobs that we aren't able to do. And it would be much further on when you start getting a large number, which would be much later in the 2030s. So it's not something anyone has to worry about between now and 2030, but you're going to start seeing the initial deployment of the bots that they're able to do useful work. And again, that is a point that Brett brought up, that he said that it will be useful and they will be doing commercial applications. And so that's exactly what they're doing, is that, you know, the commercial applications, they're trying to get into BMW to show that it can start working in the factory. And the definition of useful that I have is very, very simple. If the bot is able to do a task that you are currently paying someone to do, and is able to do that specific task for, let's say, the same efficiency and quality as a human worker, and it costs the same or less, it's useful. That's it, period. It doesn't have to do a whole lot of things. It just has to be able to demonstrate that in some situations it is useful, which means it's providing value, which means you are going to prefer the bot over the human labor. If it's not useful, then it's just this, you know, intellectual exercise that, yeah, we can get them to do it, but it's so costly, forget about it. And we've seen technology do that many, many times where it's very promising, but it's so costly, it's not worth deploying. And then 5 years, 10 years later, they figure out those problems and suddenly it comes in and takes over. I think we're at that point that we're very close to seeing the bots being useful in many places in these factories. And all it has to do is, you know, the definition of useful is providing utility, and utility usually means it provides some sort of value. And if it affects the bottom line, useful, period.
Yep. And then Elon also just said last week, right, that that they are hoping that they'll have some humanoid bots, Optimus, being shipped by next year. And that is, you know, he referred to to Optimus as a product several times. So it looks like that, yeah, 3 times. So like they're very close to doing this. So let's just do a quick summary of what we're talking about here. You've got a news item from Bloomberg saying that humanoid robot startup Figure AI is in funding talks with Microsoft and OpenAI, that possibly Microsoft would lead a round that could raise $500 million. I've just showed this demo of Figure Robotics. You and I have done a deep dive interview with the CEO, Brett Adcock, so people can watch that and to learn more. And yeah, it's going to be a $500 million funding round led by Microsoft and OpenAI, and it's according to a person with knowledge of matter. But you and I agree this is very likely to be true. This is very likely to be true. We know that Figure is, they've shown that they've got a bot. They've shown that they've got this ability to teach it and that to learn. In this case, they showed the coffee demo. They've got a partnership with BMW now. And so it's just they need money to make the startup grow, and then they need the OpenAI. So OpenAI wants to make sure that they have their hands in as many bots out there. This is one of them. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it doesn't come as a surprise that this would happen, because we know that the last round was last May, and the coffers are gonna start running dry pretty soon. And I'm sure these talks may have been going on for a while. I'm sure the firms that did the first round were already kind of reaching out and doing everything. And it's a question: have they been reaching out, or is it more or less like these firms start knocking on their doors just as some of the others? So the capital interest is definitely out there, and it's, like we said, it's an adequate round, but it's not like a ridiculous round where they suddenly threw $1 or $2 billion. And a lot of times, when that happens, that's usually when things become problematic, because then they think they're so flush with cash that they don't have to be capital efficient, or they don't have to work hard, but they realize, okay, there's going to be milestones. This means we can start to ramp up. We can take a deep breath and know that everything is going to succeed, because we are now adequately funded to be able to probably go for, at the current burn rate, they would have almost 7 years there, right? If they went through 70 million and now they have that, but they're ramping up. So I would think, from everything else that's going on, they clearly have a cash burn that will, or let's say a glide path of easily 12 months. I would say more than that, 24 to maybe 36 months. So 24, I'm pretty confident would be enough. But you never know, if this thing starts to go, the next rounds may be coming as they start to say, hey, we really see
Bigger,
a future
bigger,
here.
bigger.
But Brett already said 12 to 24 months after the BMW funding, it's like, that's what we're going to do. So I think they've got enough funding to get them through for that 24 month. And then, before there'll be another funding round. I don't think necessarily an IPO, but I could be completely wrong in that. You never know with that. Depending upon the results they're getting and all the interest, you may end up being able to see that. But until then, unfortunately, for the general public, there's no way to be able to invest in a lot of these startups yet.
So they need to raise a ton of money to do manufacturing. So when you and I interviewed Brett, and I'm going to show you guys a 30-second clip, but when Scott and I interviewed him, he said that, I believe we're going to have a hardware ready by 6 months, by the beginning, before the end of the the first half of this year. Then we're working on the AI. That's going to be the part that we need to really ramp up, and to be able to do useful work. And then later, he didn't sound like he was thinking about them, like he's ready to talk about manufacturing, scaling this. So let's watch this video of him talking about his feeling that they're ready for the hardware.
The first half of this year will be fully hardware ready to do almost anything a human can. We have the range of motion, we have the speeds, payloads and torques out of the actuators, we have the perception systems, we have the right compute and inference on board, we have the right sensors developed. I think it really comes down to an AI problem. Figure is not taking on any more clients. We've turned down a few dozen the last few weeks.
Yeah, because they need to remain focused on getting the hardware ready. I think later on in that interview, he mentioned about that they know the scalability and the manufacturing is going to be a little bit tough. They're definitely thinking about it. They're trying to design the bot to be easy to manufacture, but it's pretty easy to design it for that. The reality is that when you get down there, you realize there's little things you have to be tweaked. I don't think they have to worry about that. They have to demonstrate the bot is going, and then when it comes time to scale up the manufacturing, they will need a certain cash pile to be able to do that, but it won't be like trying to set up an automotive plant. It will be a lot easier than that and a lot quicker to be able to scale. So yeah, and probably within 2 years, we're going to start seeing the groundwork being laid, maybe even sooner, for some sort of manufacturing, because they're going to have to do a little bit of scaling in the next 24 months. They're not going to just have 2 or 3 bots out there. BMW is going to require a certain amount for them to get the data captured to demonstrate everything is working. So they're going to have some sort of, they're going to be ramping up internally what they're able to do currently, which is these manual builds. And then there will be the scaling after that to go ahead and build something that will be able to start pumping out much larger numbers.
So if you're Figure, right, and it sounds like that they are one of the leading ones. You and I have covered many different humanoid bots. We are also looking at the Chinese bot makers as well. So there's a lot that we still don't know. We need to dive in a little closer. But Figure looks like, right, they have a decent looking bot. It seems to be walking. The big announcements were that they say that they have this AI that's capable to teach it. And so that automatically removes a lot of the other bots who either can't walk, don't have the hands, and don't have the AI. So that's a smaller number. And then they have a partnership with BMW. That's like the first humanoid bot that has announced a partnership with a large corporation. So that separates them even further. Now, this makes sense, right? That they would partner with Microsoft and OpenAI. The other options would be Google and DeepMind. That, and then who else could be like the best partners? But OpenAI is clearly the leader in the AI world. And then Microsoft has the funding. They've got the huge data centers. So this seems to be pretty good that they selected, or, this is new. This is like rumors. We don't know yet, but this is not confirmed rumor news. But this makes sense that it would be Microsoft and OpenAI.
It absolutely makes sense. I was expecting, of course, that they were going to be raising capital, and they could be raising in a variety of ways. And one of them, just traditional VC, comes in there. Names we've never really heard of, or only people that are in there. But this is a household name. Obviously, Microsoft is coming in there. They didn't have to go to Microsoft. Obviously, Microsoft could come up with the money like that. Google could come up with the money. Amazon, a bunch of others. So they're probably looking at it more than just getting the capital infusion from Microsoft, but also getting that close cooperation, getting access to the compute. Because remember, the top of that list is how much is Microsoft investing into compute? I mean, it was like a huge number. I'm like, oh my goodness,
billion.
that's a big number. Again, I'm saying, per year, that the 95 million that they're putting into Figure is a rounding error as far as they're concerned. So they could be throwing a lot more there. And it might be because they realize of that triangle, the big piece is that compute, because you got to get the AI, and that the embodiment is something they don't expect to be something really, really expensive. And again, they may be playing it kind of like, all right, let's see how these guys work out. But if not, we want to be able to shift somewhere else, or who knows, they may invest in another bot manufacturer somewhere. But from the standpoint of Figure, it makes sense to have a company like Microsoft behind them doing it, because it'll be easy to get the rest of the capital in. And also, you definitely have a good partner to work with.
All right. So Figure is, do you remember how many months old they are? Because I know you know.
I think they might be 20 months now. Okay.
They're 20 months old.
Almost 3 or 4 weeks ago. And at that point, you said it was 19. So they're like 20 months
18.
now.
Yeah. So they're like 19 or 20 months old. And they're now valued at, if you look at this article here, they're saying with this, if they get this pre-money valuation, they are $1.9 billion already after 20 months. And once they have the funding, they'll be even double that. So it's pretty fast for a company to have progressed this quickly with a reputed, with a hardware that looks pretty good. So it's pretty impressive. Good partnership, makes sense. We heard that OpenAI, he said that they did it too early, and then they backed off, realizing that I need to throw the money on the brains, the AI. But they have partnered, right? OpenAI did partner with 1X also.
Yes,
right?
They did.
Yeah. So this is just potentially a second partner, which is Figure.
Right.
Maybe they have more.
And so they're basically spreading their chips around it, because they're not sure which one is necessarily going to be the one that works out. And we haven't really heard too much about the 1X, short of AI or OpenAI decided to do some sort of investment in there. So there's been some information, but let's say not the amount of information that we've been learning from Tesla and from Figure.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate this. So news, the potential is that there's going to be $500 million raised by Figure. We were expecting this, but the bigger news is that the partner could be Microsoft and OpenAI. That's really it would be a perfect move by Brett Adcock of Figure. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
thanks everybody.
Absolutely. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.